Welcome everyone. Welcome all. Hello. Dudes നേരത്തെ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു.
Okay.
We have a smaller number of participants today. We are starting with 15 today. I don't know what happened. Anyway.
Okay, we can have a more intense discussion.
Yeah, I think they will join. We are left with another 2-3 minutes. Hello, Professor Suits.
Hello. How are you, Rashid?
Hello.
Everything's okay.
Fine, Professor. How are you?
Fine. I closed everything because if not, I have a very unstable internet, so I could not listen properly. So I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Hello, Bentake.
Hi, Lena.
Hello, Bengt-Åke. Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
So I think, Andrew, we can start. It is time. Please unmute.
Very good. Yeah, and I'll start sharing the screen and we can start straight away. So thank you all for being here. My name's Andrew Cummings. I work in development anthropologist in Central America, specialized in innovation with a PhD from Aalborg. Today we're here to talk about development universities in inclusive innovation system. We have the privilege of two chairs, Gabriela Dutranite and Lena Trojer, and main speaker is Carlos Acevedo from Bolivia. And we know where we are. This is a very special series. We're in the 12th of the series to honor Christopher Freeman in his birthday century year. And a little bit more about the participants. We have Gabriela Dutranite as a PhD in Science and Technology Research Studies from SPRU, where she worked with Christopher Freeman. coordinator of the PhD and Master Program in Economics Management Policy at the Universidad Autónoma Metropolitana in Mexico. A member of the Mexican Academy of Science, coordinator in LALIX, and a coordinator of the Scientific and Technological Advisory Forum in Mexico. A very good friend of mine, and thank you, Gabriela, for being here with us. Gabriela will share some comments after the presentation of Carlos. Lena will introduce Carlos and introduce the problematics of the Development University. She's a professor at the Center for Innovation Research Circle at Lund University in Sweden, senior professor at the Department of Technology Aesthetics, Blekinge Institute of Technology in Sweden. Developed a PhD program in techno-science studies at this university, adjunct professor at Nelson Mandela African Institution of Science and Technology in Arusha, Tanzania, and has a recent interesting book on sharing fragile future, feminist techno-science in context of implication. I understand Lena's been coordinating and collaborating with Carlos Acevedo, who will be our main speaker. He's the head and researcher at the program of Innovation Technology Transfer at the Universidad Mayor de San Simón in Bolivia, the PhD from Blekinge Institute of Technology in Sweden, where he collaborated with Lena, consultant for the Vice Ministry of Science Technology of Bolivia as a consultant for innovation policy design, and he collaborates with local international networks to study the practice innovation, supporting cluster development, innovative vision community building, and local interactive learning spaces, which is part of what he's going to talk to us about. As an announcement, we have two very interesting final seminars with a different format, more a conversation with two distinguished panels of people in the next coming days, the 1st of April and the 7th of April. You have some more information in your mails about this, but I'd like to really emphasize the importance of these two discussions that will be coming up on innovation systems, foundation, evolution, development in the global South, to continue and deepen the conversation we've had up to this point, the dialogue with all of you and engaging your questions that you've been posing. For academic purposes, the entire meeting is being recorded. This is just an announcement. Hope everybody's in agreement. Now we can go over to the chair. We'll hear from Lena to start us off. Please go ahead, Lena.
Thank you very much, Professor Andrew Cummings. First, I want to thank the organizers, and especially Dr. Rajesh and Globelix with its central person, Professor Bengt-Åke Lundvall. It is really an honor to be part of Chris Freeman's Sanitary Lecture Series. I have learned a lot from the previous 11 lectures, and my ears grow big, especially when the friends from Africa and Latin America have been sharing their knowledge and experiences. So it's a great pleasure for me to be part of today's discussion. Please let me share some few words linked to the theme of this lecture, based on experiences of myself and my colleagues, including former PhD students in Tanzania and Uganda and Bolivia, in the area of innovation processes and emerging innovation systems. I would very much also like to share something linked to some previous lectures, but I try to be very short. Some words about developmental universities. As has been mentioned earlier, emerging innovation systems, let it be local, regional, or national, are depending on multi-stakeholder collaboration in our work with small firms and farms in the center. For this to happen, one central condition is the involved actors to acknowledge the importance of internal transformation. This is not the least an issue for the involved university, and I suppose we all recognize the hard struggle to tear down the ivory tower. These internal transformation processes, and I'm talking as a university person here, must be kept up and supported in order for instance, the involved university to be able to co-evolve knowledge and solutions together with knowledge producers outside the universities, and especially with those who are the owners of the problems and the challenges. A great inspirer and teacher for this transformation work is Professor Judith Zutsch. She, together with her colleagues, is helping us to understand the importance of and conditions for inclusive innovation system, and thus developmental universities to emerge. And we will hear more about that from today's lecture. Let me continue with some words about inclusive innovation processes, inclusive innovation systems. There is another vital condition beside the demand for internal transformation I want to highlight. When we talk about multi-stakeholder cooperation, about co-evolution, about triple helix and quadruple helix approaches, these processes do not fall down from heaven. These are built on certain conditions, and key is trust. How can a poor farmer, let's say a sunflower seed producer in Tanzania, be able to approach needed knowledge and technologies available at a university nearby, let's say Sokoine University of Agriculture in Morogoro? If no trust is there, trust building must somehow be worked with. The Swedish SIDA, which for instance supports Africa Leaks, also supports this kind of trust building and innovation R&D in the form of cluster initiatives and PhD studies in East Africa since 2004 and in Bolivia since 2007. This is a long-term R&D. It's a practice-driven R&D where participatory action research is central. Sometimes this also includes what is called PRA, participatory rural appraisal. This is about distributed knowledge production from within, and thus with rich and first-hand empirical data and specific qualities. It's a possibility to learn what is really happening in the complex innovation processes on the ground. And it is about to be in the context of application and context of implication. And I know that Carlos Acevedo is an expert in these qualities. Integrated in this kind of local, long-term R&D and I work are emerging innovation systems, which are finding ways up to a national level. It is a bottom-up process meeting the different national policies of poverty elevation and in some cases supporting the development of national innovation policy if these do not exist or are just starting to evolve. This kind of emerging innovation system belongs to issues more on survival for the many than for richness for the few. It's a non-linear process characterized by what has been named as Mode 2 R&D and I processes. That is what I said before, distributed knowledge and development processes in context of application and implication. Finally, I want to take the opportunity to shortly comment about something a little bit different. I want to go back to Finland's national innovation systems that was mentioned in one of the first lectures, but it was not until lecture number 4, the name Miettinen was mentioned by Dr. Lorenzo Faria in the context of co-opetition, co-evolution, non-linearity, etc. Please let me say some words why Miettinen has been so inspiring for me and some of my colleagues since the turn of the century. It also has links to the onto-epistemological discussions in the 2 latest lectures, number 10 and 11. Reijo Miettinen's analysis of how the national innovation system has developed in Finland can be called paradigmatic because of his focus on the role of the NIS as a mobilizing metaphor. Miettinen talks about a double development in that NIS has become both a scientific term and a political term. He introduced and developed an epistemology of transcursive terms that are simultaneously and interactively used both by scientific communities and in policymaking. This is a perspective that can provide our transformatory efforts with better tools to process changes in the relationship between research and society, or science and politics, to produce more substantial, complex, and integrated understandings and images of these relationships. Miettinen is, of course, following Chris Freeman and others by arguing for a more modest way of relating by emphasizing reflexivity, learning processes, and contextual knowledge production. For me, this is also an echo of Donna Haraway's emphasis on situated knowledges and of Sheila Yasanov's emphasis on technologies of humility. By these few words, I want to hand over to Dr. Carlos Acevedo. Please, Carlos.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lena, for your nice words and great introduction to the topic of our conversation today. I will share full screen. Okay, there it is. So first of all, I want to thank Rajesh for the invitation. Dr. Rajesh, thanks a lot for the invitation, and also thanks a lot to all your team, because you did a wonderful work in this lecture series. We are now in the 12, and I think we have learned a lot during all this process. I think it shows also the power of will of all our community of academics and practitioners who want to deliver this wonderful event. Also, I want to send my warmest greetings to Gatichu Shambel in Ethiopia. He was supposed to participate with me sharing this lecture, but we know in Ethiopia they are having very difficult times now. So I send him my warmest greetings, and I hope he stays well and protected. I feel very honored today to present this lecture, also with the collaboration of Professor Gabriela Dutranite, Lena Trojer, and Andrew Cummings, and also of the distinguished professors we have in our audience, like Bengt Oglumval, and of course, I am very glad to have Judith Suits among our audience. She is of great inspiration for me in this lecture. Also, I want to send my greetings to all the colleagues in the audience. So this lecture is organized in honor to Christopher Freeman. So I want to share first a couple of words from him. First, concerning to development, and second, concerning to what he felt about inequality and our predominant challenges of today. The first one was taken from the Bernard and Social Function of Science, this video that is available in the internet about the lecture he did. Then when he was asked from a person concerning developing countries and development possibilities, he answered, "Development is not possible without science and technology. Therefore, you have to have scientific and technical institutions in every country, capable of importing technology and science, certainly, but also using it for the specific purposes of each country and culture." And concerning inequality, I took this paragraph for a wonderful paper written by Arocena and Suits called Reading Christopher Freeman When Ladders of Development Are Gone. And they start this paper also citing Freeman when he said it's on a global scale that the most extreme effects of worldwide inequality in incomes are apparent. The bias in the world research innovation system is so great as to constitute a danger to the future of human society. We know rising inequalities are alongside with climate change and environmental degradation among the most worrying challenges of our time. And I also remember just a few days ago in a seminar about technological catching up, listening to Tillman Alterburg pointing out the following: this is probably the first time in history we face a needed industrial revolution that has a deadline. He was talking about maybe 2-3 decades we have to really change our practices and productive way of doing things. And this has to be driven by policy rather than technological breakthrough and market forces. So we have a very important challenge ahead. And I think universities have a very important role in this at this moment. And the developmental university concept is very important for that. I want to share also, before starting the main content of this lecture, a suggestion. This is a book called Developmental Universities and Inclusive Innovation Systems, Alternatives for Knowledge Democratization in the Global South. This book was written by Rodrigo Arocena, Bo Goranson, and Judith Suits, and it has been of great influence and gave us in Bolivia a lot of very important tools and also a vision to understand what we were doing before in context. So I think this book can be very useful for many young students and also for practitioners, because it has a lot of very important information. It compilates a lot of work done by Rodrigo, Bo, and Judith during the last years, but also new understanding of the role of university, which is of course very complex, and we need to go carefully. So my plan, my strategy for today is continue what has been said and done in the previous lectures. And my contribution will be to share with you a conversation from my position in between practice and theory at the University of San Simón. For that, I will not present a very strict collection of concepts and the debate we have currently about innovation systems, inclusive innovation systems, but to present to you the main concepts used in practice for us at the University of San Simón and in Bolivia. So from that perspective, to show what we did with what we have at certain moment. Also, why the idea of developmental university is important for us, is relevant in our context, and to explore some of our experiences, especially building interactive learning spaces. So, concerning inclusive innovation systems, we have, of course, differences in how we use the concept of innovation systems in the South. Some of them are that we use this concept as an ex post concept. That means the concept doesn't explain what we have in our countries, but mainly it draws a path to follow, what we can do, how we can organize our institution, how can we improve our practices to use science and technology for development, especially. And in the South, very seldom we have truly systemic approaches at the moment. They are mainly the existing innovation systems still have many actors working in isolation. So that's something we want to handle and contribute from the university side as well. Also, I want to highlight that Latin America is a very heterogeneous region in terms of countries and also the maturity of our national innovation systems. We cannot compare Brazil with Bolivia, with El Salvador or Colombia. So that's very important to understand. But anyways, we share something in common, that socially speaking, we are very uneven. And this is characterized as the most uneven region in the world. So that's very important to take into account. One of the marks of underdevelopment in Latin America also is the weak level of knowledge demand, stemming both from the private side, especially, and from the public sphere. Also, we know that the capitalization of knowledge has increased knowledge-based inequalities, both in the North, but with more strong impact in the South. So this figure presents a scheme of how the national innovation system in Bolivia is designed. Of course, it's much more complex, but more or less draws the main ideas we have there. This figure was presented by the Vice Ministry of Science and Technology in 2013 within the plan of science and technology and innovation. And it was understood that the national innovation system is the set of interrelated and complementary actors using science, technology, and innovation in a coordinated and constructive form that generates integral solutions for productive, social, and environmental problems with a focus on participatory, equitable, and sustainable development. The last part is very important in Bolivia because we have a very diverse group of people, ethnicities, also indigenous people. That is very important, and Bolivia is a plurinational state as well. So what I want to highlight of this plan is that we have three main sectors identified in this plan. One is the government sector, of course, and the other two are the demanding sector of science and technology and innovation and the knowledge generating sector. Something interesting in the plan is that the demanding sector and the knowledge generating sector they don't have specific actors in them. Actors from society, from the productive side, or even government can participate both in the demanding sector and in the knowledge generating sectors. So that's very important. Of course, the university plays a key role in knowledge generating sector, but it fosters the participating and exchange of knowledge from the different actors in society. Especially ancestral knowledge and rural practices are recognized as knowledge that is very important for our development. So we are talking in our studies mainly of these three sectors, and we characterize this as an emerging inclusive innovation system in Bolivia in our studies. So that's very important. Also, the National Innovation System of Bolivia is influenced highly by the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which goes in sync with the National Development Agenda. So we recognize here the value contribution of Amartya Sen, defining what is human development and what is sustainable development as the expansion of freedoms. We already know about it. Another great contribution comes from the Globelix studies, Johnson and Anders, defining inclusive development as a process of structural change, which gives voice and power to the concerns and aspirations of the otherwise excluded groups. It redistributes the incomes generated in both the formal and informal sectors in favor of these groups, and it allows them to shape the future of the interaction with the other stakeholders in groups. So that's a very important concept for us to understand how inclusive development is focused on this on that three levels. Another important issue for us is the power relations in innovation systems. We know national innovation systems are seen also as potential source of power. In fact, our national innovation system is not only focused on the interaction and collaboration among people for developing, for producing knowledge and using knowledge. It's also focused on strength, the national capacities, the strategic national capacities, like energy, like water, like many others from the government side as well. So that's very important. And in our institutions is also very important source of power, participating in these initiatives to have access to this collaboration. In the South, power stems in general, power stems to a large extent from specific combinations of both technology and social relations. For example, the combination of industrial technology and the capitalist social relations. That's very important. It's a structural problem as well. In a society based on advanced knowledge, those who have the opportunity for high-level learning and who work in conditions that promote continuous knowledge acquisition strengthen their ties to central power structures. And the opposite happens with those who are denied these opportunities. So this is also very important for us to consider. So we recognize in this context that universities play a key role in national innovation systems, at least in Bolivia as well, where 3 public universities concentrate most of the research capacities in the country. And we are talking about the university in La Paz, in Cochabamba, where I am situated at the moment, and in Santa Cruz. Universities also are key to foster transformation in society based on the use of advanced knowledge and the generation of local innovation capacities. One researcher in Bolivia pointed out Carlos Aguirre Bastos, probably some of you know him. one key role that the present university system can play is to contribute to inclusive development and social innovations, is to empower social movements, indigenous communities, and syndicates responding to their demands with high quality research and education. That's the result of his studies concerning innovation and the role of universities. So in our presentation, we will make focus in the experience developed at my university, Universidad Mayor de San Simón, and systemic approaches for direct contributions to productive sectors, particularly with SMEs in the Cochabamba region. We all know that our university contributes also from in many other ways to development in our region, but we are making focus on this kind of contribution. Closing these sections, I want to suggest this very useful tool, especially for younger students, to understand how to study developmental problems. And this model makes focus on 4 specific perspectives. The first one is the normative approach, the second one, the factual approach, the prospective approach, and the propositive aspect. So for me, one of the main important parts in this of this tool in our context is the normative approach, because most of the time we think that this normative approach is already given. There are no discussion about it, but it's very important, especially when it comes to the territory, to the local aspect of our practices. The normative approach matters, and matters a lot. And it has to do with values. We, of course, accept the perspective of the development as freedom developed by Amartya Sen, but also we have very good contributions coming from the environmental, feminist, the colonial, discolonial, critical approaches. They are very important in Bolivia, very relevant as well. So the idea of the developmental university. I will reduce this because I cannot see too much. So the idea of developmental university and why for us this idea is so relevant. Sorry. So this idea is very relevant for us because we started the unit of technology transfer. We started that unit in our university in 2004 with the idea of how to use in a better way our increasing research capacities in our university. These capacities started to grow, to be shaped, especially thanks to the international cooperation since the 80s. And as they grow, we also obtain increasing claims from society to a better contribution of our university to development processes at the local level. So we started to think how to do that. And with many difficulties and many different approaches as well. So at the beginning, we started with this unit with a linear way of thinking, linear way of understanding the problem. But despite our best efforts to present our research results in very nice brochures, and also having a lot of meetings with the main firms in our region, we couldn't really link our capacities to support these productive needs or demands. That was very difficult. It was very difficult to apply linear innovation models in this context. And later we understood that that has to do with the low effective knowledge demand from the productive sectors and their capacities to absorb them. Some statistics we have to explain to draw better the situation can be seen in this table. where we have the R&D expenditures as a percentage of the GDP, and we have how is distributed between the higher education sector, the government sector, and the business sector, compared, for example, with Sweden, a country with whom we cooperate a lot. And we understood that our main problem was not how much we spent necessarily in the higher education system, but how we spent in R&D in the business sector. And that has an impact on the absorptive capacity of this sector and how they demand, how they solve their problems. Most of them directly just import solutions from other countries, and they don't invest too much in our own capacities. So at this time, at this moment, we understood the limitations to use a concept, a model that was very famous at that moment, which was the triple helix model, especially the component of this model that concerns the university, which promotes the entrepreneurial university and the capitalization of knowledge. For us, was very difficult to go in that line, and we felt we were really out of the box of this trend with our initiatives and our context. It was extremely difficult. So as a proposal, we presented a new approach. At that time, we are talking about 2008. And this approach was to develop at our university institutional competences and capabilities for studying, promoting, and actively participating in systems and process of innovation at the local, regional, and national levels. So this approach is a more proactive approach. It allows us to start building connections and transformations inside the university and also outside. So that was very necessary for us. The project had four components. The first one was to strengthen our technology transfer unit and its facilitating role, especially. Also later, in 2013, we included a research and training on innovation systems research. So that was also very important. But at the beginning, we stated these very key components. The first one, a cultural transformation of university research practices closer to our local needs, and also development of innovation system approaches, generating the spaces for collaboration, which didn't exist at that moment. For that phase was very important the contribution, the leadership of Eduardo Zambrana, which was the director at that time, and also our Swedish partners, Dan Schreger and Lena Trojer, linked to Vinnova in Sweden, and their experiences in Africa, Lena talked about before. So that was very important, and this project was financed by SEED as well. Another important element was action research. The action research approach was a strategic approach for our understanding in our project. So the developmental university concept, this is very important for us because after we presented and started these initiatives, we were like alone in terms of concepts, in terms of how to address, how to measure, how to orient our actions in a better way. We had, of course, very empirical information and experiences in Africa, but the developmental university approach organizes and gives strength to our initiatives. This concept, this idea, states that the developmental university has defined it as an open, interactive setting incorporating different groups in society, including industry, of course. However, it does not operate according to the logic of making profit. Rather, its major aim is to contribute to social and economic development, while at the same time guarding a certain degree of autonomy. Autonomy is a key issue in Latin American universities, at least the public universities. Also, the concept defines that the developmental universities are committed to human sustainable development by means of the three interconnected practices of the missions: teaching, research, and fostering the socially value use of knowledge through the democratization of knowledge, democratization the access of to higher education, democratization of research agendas, and democratization of knowledge diffusion. In a nutshell, developmental university is characterized by its commitment to the democratization of knowledge. Going further, a democratization to higher education can be understood as the teaching mission, which aims to generalize access to higher education, and seen as a lifelong advanced learning of increasing quality and increasing connected to work, citizen activities, cultural expansion, and in general, freedoms and capabilities for living lives that people value and have a reason to value. Democratization of research agendas has to do with the mission of research and expanding endogenous capabilities for generating knowledge at the local, regional, and national levels in all disciplines and in interdisciplinary activities, which is very important for us, with international quality and social vocation as well. The third mission is fostering the social value use of knowledge, aims above all to cooperate with a wide variety of actors in interactive learning processes that upgrade their capabilities for producing goods and services, as well for solving problems with priority given to the most the private sectors. So that is very important for us as well. And the idea of developmental university also includes that developmental universities are those involved in the production of learning and innovation processes which foster inclusive development. Committing universities to the democratization of knowledge also implies dedicating time and effort to cooperate with different organisms and collaborate with collective actors in interactive learning spaces where different priority is given to those of the most private sectors. Developmental universities are also perceptive to demands from other segments of the population, particularly marginalized groups with weak or unarticulated demand innovation. That is also very important. So in the next section, I will make focus on interactive learning spaces, but here we will have the concept. Interactive learning spaces provide actors with opportunities to strengthen their learning capacities. We know through the definitions of innovation systems how important learning is for that. So to strengthen learning capacities while searching for solutions to given problems in an interactive manner. This may include a range of different organizations and individuals and can emerge in a variety of contexts. Examples include the many concrete cases of sustained cooperation between producers and researchers, leading to mutual change and growth, while fostering collaboration between the involved parties and other actors. Interactive learning spaces can develop system dynamics by their own right and may be regarded as potential seeds for inclusive innovation system. And that is our approach. That's our key understanding of that. That's why we are building interactive learning spaces in our university. At the beginning, as I mentioned, we started with cluster development. We called like that, but also we understood that the concept of interactive learning spaces also allow us to make focus on the learning, strengthening capacities. So these initiatives we started in our university, enabling first a permanent space for interaction and innovation learning, both in two main productive sectors, the food sector and the leather sector, with the SMEs. Our office, the Technology Transfer Office, took the role of facilitating these processes, which was very important. And we also gained capacity for financial resources attraction for firms demand-based research. That was also very important. We were focused on SMEs, producers, especially from giving space to those from vulnerable groups, like women in the case of the food cluster, and also rural producers were especially invited and welcome to participate. Trust building and self-confidence between university and participants was promoted. That was also another key factor of our initiatives. And also to articulate, to link a group of researchers in our university to shape a first important researchers team to support these initiatives that emerge from the cluster actions. And we were able to gather 35 researchers in these initiatives, an interdisciplinary group coming from 20 university units and 4 faculties. So we try to build the interdisciplinary approach or multidisciplinary approach for to collaborate with the firms from inside the university. That was also very important. So in these initiatives, we had also interactive learning opportunities. And we started as a program with the low-hanging fruits of the university. We have to start with what we have at hand. That was very important, not with very big ambitions, because that could demotivate our agents in collaboration. So our interactive learning opportunities were focused on annual evaluation and planning events between researchers, government, and SMEs in the different clusters, organizing different training courses that responding to the demand of the firms according what they prioritize first, and our capacities, of course. And this other was very important as well, to enable labs and services at the university that didn't exist before, to support environmental impact, especially in the leather sector, with tannery firms contaminating water, and also services to support good practices for food safety certification in firms. Remember, these SMEs linked to the cluster, most of them worked in isolation. They didn't participate in chambers or another associations. They were really in need to this support. So we enabled those services that were very useful. Also, we promote researchers, student, firms, short research projects. About 17 we have already developed so far. Also, the participation of pre-graduate students to short-term projects, and that linked to the firms, of course. And that's a very important aspect of our initiatives, to engage pre-graduate students to start to apply their knowledge, to have a space for applying knowledge. That is very important, and build capacities in the students, and also confidence in what they are learning and what they are applying. Another interactive learning opportunity, very important, has to do with annual guided visits of SMEs to research centers, and vice versa as well, according to the need. The visit of researchers to SMEs, those are opportunities to know in field what is happening and what are the capacities, what are the needs, even beyond what is expressed by the entrepreneurs or researchers. And organizing annual fairs also has been key for us in the university campus, where researchers present the research results together with firms presenting their innovative products. So those are 3 days where they have the opportunity to know each other, to have conversations, to have agreements, to initiate different collaborations as well, mainly in an informal setting at the beginning, but as long as they get mature, they can be formalized at UTT at our unit, and also find resources to do that. Also, the articulation of other local institutions around the cluster agenda, for example, SME chambers are also important, regulating institutions, public centers for technical support that happen in both clusters as well. And the participation of SMEs in national and regional sectoral networks, that's also important. We promote that to participate in these networks, organizing the National Innovation System agenda, but also international networks like CITED, Iberoeca. Probably some of you already know that. Attraction to resources, also that is very important, because resources are very limited in our university. Despite our good collaboration with SIDA, we need to attract more resources to respond to our initiatives and the demands that are emerging. In that, we have been able to attract resources for building prototypes of machines, for a specific component of our project focused on social innovation, and for other projects and studies funded by SIDA, studies at the PhD and master levels. And more recently, we have been able to induce as well the interest in SMEs for local machine prototyping. That was very important for us, and we have learned a lot from those experiences. I will talk a little bit more about in the next slides. And also, practice action research was very important for us, and from 2013 we have been able to start a PhD program and a master program to follow our activities, our evolution with cluster development, and also learn from other initiatives in our university and in our country as well, of course. This is not the only one. So within that context, we have been able, first with practice, this innovation community in our university, innovation community of researchers and academics practicing innovation. And for that, Mode 2 and action practice research was key. I mentioned already, we have 35 researchers of different faculties joined in our group, and also studying our results in a PhD and master program. Coevolution is key also in our initiatives. Coevolution is not only a hand-in-hand process between actors within and outside universities. It is integrating processes between Mode 2 researchers and predominantly Mode 1 researchers and partners in society. That's something that has been a result of our initiatives. Inclusive innovation system and the democratization of knowledge were included in the institutional development plan. That is also a latest result. Based on our results in cluster development, we have been able to make it visible how important it was for our university to take in account this at the institutional level, at the strategic institutional level. And that was, I have to say, nothing easy. It's very political, very, very, very tricky. So making focus on this component of our initiatives, prototyping was also very key for us, because we have been able to put in practice a lot of our knowledge and capacities in our faculty. Don't forget, we are located in the Faculty of Science and Technology, so it's important also to give a very prominent room to the development of technology and the use of that. So, but despite we did very interesting initiatives, many of them, of course, can be improved a lot. We were not able to make them visible for our society as an important contribution. And of course, after that, to keep learning and keep improving these capacities in our faculty, in our university. It was very difficult because most of these products are not new for the world, let's say, are adaptations, are specific requirements of the firms, and they usually don't appear in the statistics of our university and the statistics of real contributions that are needed in our society. So for that, another tool very important coming from the developmental university approach is this matrix developed also for Judith Sud in collaboration with Srinivas from India, I think. And in this matrix, we can make these contributions more visible. This matrix discusses how problems are solved in the North and how problems are understood in the South. For example, in the above, we have problems for which solutions have been found in industrialized countries, and also problems for which solutions have not been searched in industrialized countries. And on the left, we have problems present in developing countries for which satisfactory solutions exist, and also problems present in developing countries for which satisfactory solutions do not exist. And for example, in the first quadrant, we have the vast majority of solutions which are acquired by technology transfer, buying technology for another country, which is the usual, I could say even is in the manual of our policymakers and our entrepreneurs in Bolivia, at least. Also, we have seen that during the COVID pandemic. All the solutions were thought as, were understood, all the solutions needed were understood as how we can import the solutions from other places and not to develop those solutions locally, even though some of them were all very possible locally. So in the second quadrant, we have solutions to problems mainly posed in industrialized countries and developed locally. And in the fourth, we have canonical solutions which exist in industrialized countries, but for many reasons are not possible to access in developing countries. And that was the case of our prototyping. Many of them were very expensive locally, and in terms of scale, they didn't fit well for the needs of our entrepreneurs, small entrepreneurs. So as a way of studying this, what we did was to ask to prominent researchers and entrepreneurs to identify what were the main or the best experiences developing machines in our region in Cochabamba, both in the private sector and also at the university. What kind of experiences we have in order to see if our experience was very unusual or it was a common thing in our society. So we studied 5 initiatives developed of prototyping developed in SMEs, and 4 initiatives developed at the university. And we found that all of them belong to this 4 quadrant. All of them are adaptations, are local production of technology that already exists in other parts of the world. But what is very important for this is that we recognize that was the situation in most of the initiatives in our region, also the best ones. But also we recognize that we need to make them visible, because cultivating these capacities for building local machines, despite they exist in other places in the world, based on those capacities, we can build capacities for new ones. And that is very, very important. And it's usually not recognized in our context. Most of the time, these solutions developed locally, they are recognized as partial solutions while we find the resources to buy the real ones, let's say, more or less. So some common characteristics we found among these 9 cases, both developed at the university and in the private sector, where they all develop in the indigenous problem-solving capacities and also collaborating capacities. They all have a strong self-esteem of researchers and entrepreneurs to confront problem-solving processes in scarcity conditions. They all have a great creativity to use the low-hanging fruits of available resources and attract collaborations within formal but mostly informal settings. Firms found a market in the case of the prototypes developed by firms. These firms found a market niche by offering specialized services to big firms, building their capacities for designing machines, but mainly repairing machines, which is very expensive to bring the experts from foreign countries. Research centers worked also, but mainly with international cooperation and focused on environmental issues. So treatment plants and this kind of things are very useful at the university. And just one of the cases was scaled for replication at the national level. Most of the cases are just solutions that are produced once for solving one problem. So with that, I would like to just share some final reflections of our experience concerning developmental universities and our approach. A very modest approach is not really something very big. So for us, developmental university approach was very relevant, both for action research and to build an institutional transformation agenda, as we have been able to put the concept into the strategic agenda. No innocent position exists in science. That's also very important. Values matter to foster and critique local development practices. SMEs of cluster participate as agents. That is very important within co-production and co-evolutionary processes for innovation and capacity building together with the university. We are not in a really better position than them. We are building capacities together. Interactive learning spaces need to be protected, and public universities can be proactive actor and safer place for its incubation. For us, is a year and year, let's say, caring of these interactive learning spaces we call clusters, because we need to protect, to find the resources. It's not easy, and these initiatives can be dissolved also easily. So they are very important. Democratization, also this is a personal reflection, democratization at the end of the day, if it's real, must enable possibilities of change and transformation to reduce inequality. If not, democracy has no sense if there is no possibilities for change. Democratization of knowledge, mode 2, knowledge production, and PAR fosters also the production of commons. And that has to do beyond a property right issue to understand these relations enabled in our interactive learning spaces as a form of social relations to produce and reproduce endogenous capacities. Also, we think that more forms of measuring and promote universities' contribution to social inclusion needs to be developed in order to make them visible, in order to promote and to attract also more resources to that. And we also think that action practice research can be more visible to contribute studies and situated innovation studies in our community, academic community. Yeah, those are the main reflections and the main things I wanted to share with you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carlos. That was very good, and we have lots of time to have a conversation. We'll start that conversation with Gabriela, and then we have a line of some other senior researchers who are here with us, and then I see some interesting questions coming up that then we could bring back to Carlos. So please go ahead, Gabriela.
Okay. Thanks for the organization of this series to honor Chris, and thanks, Carlo, for your very interesting presentation. As it was said already, universities are actors of the innovation system. They basically produce knowledge and train human resources, and hence they are a live component of the process of generation, acquisition, and diffusion of knowledge. Innovation systems change over time, and this contributes to the economic change and development. So universities actively contribute to the development process. If we assume a broader approach, we have to highlight the importance of different subsystems of society for understanding how innovation systems change over time. And Freeman argued that there are 5 subsystems of society: economics, science, technology, politics, and general culture. So referring to 3 of them, which are more related to universities, science refers to those institutions which are primarily concerned with the advancement of knowledge about the natural world and the ideas of those individuals whose activities are directed toward this objective of science. Politics, another subsystem of society, refers to those individuals, institutional subsystems of society, which are primarily concerned with the governance, legal and political regulation by central, local, or international authorities of society. And general culture referred to those ideas, values, artistic creations, tradition, religions, and customs, which influence the behavioral norms of society and those of individuals and institutions which promote them. General education and higher education, where universities are located, cross several of these subsystems of society. For instance, they contribute to shape the behaviors of several actors, and they contribute to create values, amongst others. Freeman argued that these semi-autonomous but interdependent subsystems transcend the arenas of the economy and technology, and their coevolution is essential to understand how innovation systems evolve. Hence, this reaffirms that education in all its levels, and so also higher education, is essential for development. Let me move now to the main point of these sessions, specific features of universities in the Global South related to their role on development. I would like to focus my comment in a set of reflections on the 3 functions of universities and then on their role on the development process. I would like to put some questions on the table for discussions. First, the function of university as human resources trainer. The universities train human resources of high level, as it was said before, and they have to train also citizens, and in this way contribute to the democratization of knowledge. I wonder, do we need engineers? Do we need mostly PhD? Or do we need a broad set of professional citizens who have the skills to act in the different subsystems of society? The other of the functions, university as producer of knowledge. All over the world, universities are important knowledge producers in developing, and particularly in developing countries. They are largely the main, maybe unique, knowledge producers. What type of science they have to produce? This is a long-standing discussion that go back to Pavic, for instance, who Keith Pavic posed these questions in the 80s. Do developing countries have to produce science? Freeman provided an answer, and Carlos mentioned this in his presentation. He argued on the importance of producing science to understand and follow the frontier, the knowledge frontier in developing countries. Research which produces knowledge tend to be classified as curiosity-motivated research and problem-oriented research. Research motivated by curiosity, also known as basic or fundamental research, in fundamentally undertaking to obtain new knowledge about the foundation of observable phenomena and facts, without thinking of giving them any specific application or use. The other, problem-oriented research, known as applied research, is primarily directed towards specific practical goals. Universities, other higher education institutions, and national laboratories primarily generate research motivated by curiosity, while specialized R&D laboratories and public or private research centers have a balance in favor of problem-oriented research. In a simplified way, there are three users or beneficiaries of the knowledge generated: the academic sector itself to generate other knowledge, public or social enterprises, the private business sector, the government at all levels of administration, and also society. Hence, universities have to attend all these sources of demand. I wonder, what type of science do we need? Only science oriented to solve local problems? Only science that results from co-production of knowledge between scientists and communities of users? Concerning the third mission of universities, there are different approaches, and Carlos mentioned the two most important, the entrepreneurial university, based on the idea that the dissemination of knowledge produced can be used for commercial purpose, and the other, the developmental university, which was the core of the Carlos presentation, which emphasized the contribution this institution, university, can make to development. It does not operate according to the logic of profit making, and it interacts with different actors in society. And this was the focus of her presentation, with interesting examples of application of this approach. In general, and the questions that I have to put, I want to put, in general, what type of science is that related to developmental university? Motivated by curiosity or motivated or oriented to solve problems? What kind of research is required to address public problems? What type of science is required for the matrix of solutions that Carlos presented, that was made by Smith and Judith, in the short and long term? And all this has a lot of implications for science policy. Regarding the question of what type of research is required to address public problems, also in the short term, it seems that with problem-oriented research, it is possible to face public problems today. But for the medium and long term, it is necessary to produce science motivated by fundamental questions, and thus to be prepared to be able to attend new public problems that arise, or to attend to the same problem, but with better tools and knowledge coming from the knowledge frontier. These are the questions we are discussing in Mexico today with a left government. Our government, the main target is poor people are first, which obviously we agree Mexico has a huge inequality that has to be reduced. And now we live in a context of scarcity of financial resources. The scarcity was before the pandemic of COVID, no? And now the scarcity is even worse, no? But all this particularly the main target of the government and the context of scarcity of financial resources, this has a lot of consequences for science policy and in general for science, technology, and innovation policy. In Mexico, the focus of this policy is on local problems, and now they are reducing the support to basic science and even to general scholarship for the formation of master and PhD students. The focus now is a more oriented support to oriented in the sense of to solve local problems. This could be a signal that developmental university is a model to follow and that the innovation system must be inclusive in the case of Mexico. No? And we wonder, can university play a role in development if they only produce problem-oriented research? Following Freeman and the paragraph that Carlos mentioned, this is not enough for the long-term process of development. Thanks a lot for the opportunity to give some comments, and I hope that Judith can contribute a lot to this discussion today.
Thank you very much, Gabriela. And in fact, I think the next person to come in could be Judith. And I think Carlos, there you just got a lot of questions from Gabriela that I'm sure at the end would be great to try to select and reflect on. That's what I propose. We have a round here of comments and by senior researchers, please looking at the questions that have come up in chats, and then we'll pose those questions that haven't been answered by the people, the younger researchers, and have some answers from Carlos and whatever final comments that Gabriela and Lena want to come in on. That's what I propose in the time that we have here, which is substantial. So please, Judith, and then some other of the
Thank you very much, Andrew. Can you listen to me? Okay, because I'm sorry not to put my camera, but my video, because my reel is very unstable. So I am looking to you, Andrew. If something goes wrong, you make me some, or Gabriela or Carlos or Lena, make me a signal, please. I congratulate Carlos, I congratulate Lena and Gabriela, Gabriela, as usual, I have to say that I agree.
We're having a little bit of problem with Judith. Give it, just be patient here a second.
Of university. And let me tell you that this battle is not new at all.
Judith, please, I'm sorry, yes. Can you repeat? We lost your audio for a second when you were starting your argument. Please, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Carlos, for telling me. I say that the soul of university is at the center of an ideological battle that is not new. We Latin Americans, since 1918, with the process of the Córdoba reform, we have battled to change universities, to transform them into a way of democratizing very, very autocratic and unequal societies. And Carlos already mentioned autonomy was a first issue. Co-government by students was a second issue, and extension and or outreach were the third. These are the three issues that the Córdoba reform fostered all over Latin America and had so important, not only academic, but political significance during all the 20th century. And it continues to be, let me tell you, the students that are there in the front of the issue. Not only 2011 Chilean students that make such a huge transformation in the Chilean political panorama, but also in Seoul, also in Hong Kong. Remember the students fighting for freedom, fighting for democracy. And that's very important. This is the real soul of the universities. The building of a citizenship responsible and committed. And I would like also, talking about these issues, to recall an expression that Rodrigo put forward that is very simple. We are not living in a knowledge economy. We are living in a capitalist knowledge economy. And this is important to understand the fight that universities has to, well, to fight, to reincorporate a social commitment into their work. And as Gabriela very clearly put forward, innovation systems, as a lot of actors, an inclusive innovation system cannot have the same kind of actors that any other innovation system. So being universities such important actors in innovation system, for inclusive innovation system, we need different universities. It's as simple as that. And this is also a different way of saying, for inclusive innovation system, we need developmental universities. I am not going, of course, to develop any idea about the developmental university that Carlos so brilliantly and has developed. But I would like to ask the following question. Is it possible to foster developmental universities? Is this really something that can happen, or just one more of this kind of dream that some silly person put forward and they feel so good because they say so nice things? So let's face the question. Is it possible to foster developmental? Is yes, undoubtedly, yes. Carlos talk about Cochabamba and Bolivia. Let me tell you some very simple things that we have done in Uruguay. Rodrigo was 8 years the rector of the university, and he fought for that. And some things were done. Some things were done. Let me just put one thing. If you have a university, you need people with low cultural background. Get into it and stay there. The problem of the linking of the most vulnerable students from the university is a mark of a non-developmental university. How could you do that? Well, solidarity. We put forward a system of tutors among peers for students for 4 of the latest year, helping students of the first year, so they can not get lost in the huge and impersonal university. Some of the comment talk about an imposing university, referring to firms. University can be also not friendly to their own students. And
okay, got some really important comments. Let's see if Judith can come back in here.
But
yeah.
Yes. Are you listening? It's okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I go ahead. This is one thing. Another thing, in the University Research Council, we have a program that is paid by budget to fund, to give money to projects between university researchers and small firms that don't have the money. They don't have the knowledge, they don't have the ideas, they don't have the money. So we go there and we search them and we say, okay, you are not going to pay, we are going to pay. So this is something important. And just an anecdote. this program was first, they wanted to call the program University Enterprise Program. And we said, no, we are called this program University Productive Sectors. And we include trade unions because trade unions also are productive sectors. And this is the kind of little thing, if you want. Some are very, very important. For instance, we have a program called Research and Innovation Oriented Towards Social Inclusion. And we are not we don't sit and expect them to come. We go out and we ask, and we work a year with the Minister of Social Affairs or with the care system or whatever to unearth the question they have and to translate this question into research questions, because take on board problems. They need to translate them in research questions. This is, and you know, this is extremely complicated. But my point is, it can be done. It can be done. And if I have to say what is at least for me, because I work in the Research Council, this is for me, I say, it's a very, very particular and narrow perspective, but it's not a trivial one. I think that we have two challenges to foster in one of its direction. It's not the only one, but one of its direction, the developmental university. The first, we have failed until now, and is to transform the research evaluation system. With the current research evaluation system, it is not possible to have really developmental universities. Okay, that's simple as that. If you count papers, and you try to be as good as, and you want to enter the ranking of, well, this is not the way. We have failed, but we continue fighting, and we have friends all over the world, and this can be done too. And the other challenge in which I think we are better positioned to win is building inclusive research agendas. I bet on the solidarity of researchers, yes. And I'm not naive, huh? I am not naive. I am telling you, I bet on solidarity, but solidarity needs to be helped. Researchers cannot be alone on that. And that is perhaps one of the most important issues of a developmental university. To give space that is there already. And believe me, it can be done. Thank you.
Wow, well, we knew it would be inspiring, but maybe that was a very, very interesting comment there, Judy. Thank you very much. Always challenging to our thought and motivating us to go forward. Let's also hear in a very succinct way from maybe Bendo Gelungfal, maybe Alex, who's here also on the group, a couple more, maybe KJ, and then let's go to some questions starting from Dekalav Cherent from the junior researchers. Okay, Bendoke or KJ?
Okay. Thanks for a very nice presentation. I was asked by the chair to say a few words on my own university. I came to the university in Aalborg in Denmark about 50 years ago, and it had certain elements of aiming to be inclusive. It was established in a region where on average, workers were more low-skilled, there were more unemployment, and a smaller share of young people had access to academic training. So just establishing a university there was aiming, it was during a social democratic government. But of course, Denmark is a capitalist society, and you can say that Aalborg is thus a capitalist academic set of activities. What I think has been obtained in 50 years is that the structure of employment in this region has changed completely. It actually became a center for high-tech activities, especially information technology. Employment levels are now, and income levels are at the level of the rest of Denmark. So in that sense, and the university has definitely contributed strongly to this. So that's one way of looking at inclusion, to move knowledge to underprivileged regions. One thing which characterized this Aalborg University from the beginning was principle of problem-based learning. And part of that was that students have been recognized as extremely important connection persons to the rest of society. They work on projects of some kind of practical meaning, all from very practical, developing new technologies and machinery, to looking into social problems in their projects, etc. And I think this might sometimes be at least as important form of interaction as specific research projects. And it also has the extra advantage that it prepares students who will be more ready to go into work when they finish with their grades. I have one general comment, and that is we normally agree that one size does not fit all. And I think this is very much true for universities as well. I think we should think not about a kind of special model for every university. We should think about university systems. I mean, normally we have more than one higher education institutions, and there should be a division of labor. I mean, not all major universities should be focused on local problems. It's absolutely necessary that they are connected to global knowledge. And to be that, they need to have very high standards in terms of academic and education, etc. And within each university, we should also think about the differentiation. There should be at the same time interdisciplinary, very applied research groups, and there should be room for groups working long time or more creative thinking. This is what I've heard from Gabriela. I think she's completely right. We should not let the focus on solving today's problem rule out curious kind of research. So these were my words. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think it's very useful to think that development universities don't all happen in the South. We have, you know, Aalborg, we have maybe Lund, and also I would say, is there a role for Northern universities as developing universities as they collaborate with universities in the South? I see KJ and then maybe Alex. KJ, you'd like to come forward?
Yeah, thank you. To begin with, I think I must compliment the speakers, Gabriela and moderator, and all of you have done a wonderful job. And of course, my limitless appreciation goes to Rajesh and his team was putting up. I think this is the last lecture, I understand. So, but my great appreciation to all of you. I have nothing much to add than what my earlier speakers told, because we happen to speak the same language, because we have more or less the same thought process. To repeat more, maybe coming from my own experience in India, I would like to say that the tragedy of the modern times, there are many. Two important ones is the university ranking and the what's so-called rating agencies. The rating agencies, they decide quite a lot which way the government should, what the government should do, what the government should not do. Apart from this is the reflection of the market, and not in that whole process. The policy makers and the government, they don't see the people. In fact, Mahatma Gandhi has made a statement many years ago saying that when you are making a policy, you should be essentially looking at the last man in the society, how this decision will impact upon him. That should be your the guiding principle. And similarly, we have today the so-called university ranking system. I just fail to understand, as Judy said, what purpose it actually serves. The manner in which PhDs are being produced. I remember when I was doing, my postdoc in Yale University. Whenever we go to the tea club, there is a talk saying that either you publish or perish. Today, what I see here is large number of people are publishing and perishing. They publish, I would say, rubbish. And the whole research, the word doctor of philosophy, PhD, that philosophy, that thought process has totally gone from the whole process of PhD making. Today, we are actually making not thinkers, but actually we are shamelessly producing technicians. And even in a science like economics, if you can run, regression models, which are very often regression models rather than regression models, and that you are able to get them published in the journals of repute of the type with impact factor significantly high. I will tell you that, I have an experience of applying for a job in a particular place outside the country. Of course, I didn't get. After a year or so, I was speaking in a particular place in the same country, in another country. One person came and told me that I apologize to you. Why are you apologizing to me? He told, look, you remember you applied for a post there? I was in the selection committee. I did not select you, but we selected somebody else. That person is nowhere near to you but he had excellent publication. But very often, what I'm trying to say, that I'm not saying that publication is bad, publication is good. But I'm trying to say that when you are thinking about a university with its social commitment, the way in which today you rate the institutions, the ranking the institutions, to what extent that takes into account this basic concern. And when you talk about university, the universities are becoming so much specialized. The word universe, the place universities quintessentially, in my view, has to be a place where whole lot of knowledge is generated. And if nowadays we have got Fish University, we have got all kinds of universities. The universities are in a world of specialization, narrowing so much. What I'm trying to say is that this is a time to think afresh in terms of what is the role of universities and developmental universities, I cannot agree more with Judith saying that, you know, the thing is that we have a large number of people working across different countries, sharing the same thought process. It is high time that we come together and these kind of meetings. And in fact, GlobalX Forum should in fact be one to stimulate such thought process and make ourselves more socially relevant, particularly in a developing countries where we, including me, are paid enormously by the poor man's tax money, and the kind of work which we do is totally, I would say that very often not very relevant for the society that pays us. So we are not reciprocating the society. So I think this is where the role of the universities and the relevance of development universities needs to be rethought. Thank you very much. I think I thought I didn't want to speak this much. I'm sorry that I was not brief. Okay, thank you very much. With a lot of appreciation to all of you. In fact, all those who support. Thank you.
Thank you, KJ. It's so good to hear the emotions coming out in this discussion. Obviously, we've touched some fibers. That's really good. I'd like to hear from Alex, and then we'll open the floor. I think we'll start with Kekalab. I know I'm massacring your name. I'm very sorry. Please, Alex, if you'd like to briefly say something, maybe this question of Claudia's about rural settings would be in your line of work.
First, I would like there is a message here. Okay. I think the problem now that we are having from the 80s or the 90s in the universities is much more than the problem of financing a special type of research. Is the problem of financing research in general. Always there is some funds for basic research, but in Mexico at least, people apply the research, apply to the fund that is open instead of the fund that is designed for them. And this make a bit of confusion, but the problem essentially is the little amount of resources that is given to the universities in Latin America for doing research. Most of universities that are not in the center, in the capital of the countries, they research for doing research is they are much more teaching universities than research universities. So this is, in my point of view, this is a problem in itself that doesn't have to do with the developmental universities or not, but have to do with the vision that our governments have about importance of science and technology and research for development. Actually, most time they are not worried about development, but they are worried about if they are going to be elected again or not. This creates a problem on financing research and financing. Relatively to to rural settings, universities creating inclusive innovation for rural settings. Well, that is interesting because in Latin America it was created a lot of universities, rural universities that were essentially developmental universities in the past. They contributed very fairly in the development of the countryside. They contribute to the introduction of new technologies. But now a lot of these universities have been closed down, or not closed down, but the centers of research that supported the transfer of technology from the universities to the countryside and to give solutions to the problems of the countryside, of the rural settings. Most of these universities and research centers were closed in the beginning of the 20s. Now we have a big hole in our capabilities. We did some research in this, and we found that the researchers in the agriculture consider three products important: articles for publication, recommendations. They are very keen to produce recommendations for the agricultural, above all for the poorest, the small agriculture. So there is, I think that university can contribute very fairly, and there is a trust between the researchers and the countryside and the small producers in the agriculture. And this contributes to open the possibility of a better interchange of knowledge, and so to innovation and inclusive innovation.
Great. I think that's a...
There is another point that is related to Cuba. Cuba is the case where a university have done a lot of big contribution to the development of products produced in the university using, they are special products, very high price and very low quantity required. And they in Cuba, they have done a lot of, the advance of Cuba is very, very important. And the approach was to produce inside the university, to use the university as a resource for production, and not only for research by curiosity. They did curiosity impulsed research. They does that, and they does the whole cycle of the development.
Okay, and that's the last important point, that is certainly different models of society produce different universities, and the Cuban example, I think, is really relevant for me in Latin America. I think we're going now to the next section, and we're almost out of our official time, but generally we go over a little bit. And I'd like to come back to obviously Carlos, and also at least Lena at the end. George, you were asking some questions, and if anybody else wants to come up with some questions and maybe short comments on your university experience, but quite short. George?
Oh, thank you. Right. Thanks very much, Andrew. And I believe this invitation is to talk about how Africa Lakes is also contributing to developing the concept of developmental universities and actually operationalizing it. Let me start by emphasizing the fact that, yes, Africa, we need to operationalize the concept of developmental universities, universities that are focused on the conceptual and societal problems in our various countries, and universities that are playing roles beyond the traditional roles they are playing to ensure that we contribute to addressing those societal problems. And so in that regard, it's about doing more than we already see in the universities where they are graduating young people that are coming out with qualifications at the various levels of education, BScs and masters and what have you, but rather zero in to the specific social and economic challenges that are there. For example, you have micro, small, and medium enterprises wanting to have specific technical and innovative solutions to their production processes. And the whole point is to improve on their production processes and to be more competitive. However, we have the situation where they are distanced from the universities where the knowledge base is and where those innovative solutions can come from. And so, in fact, it's in that regard that I was wondering whether the ivory tower concept of universities we are running in our part of the world is also contributing to the gap between the production sector actors and the knowledge institutions as we have in our universities. And in fact, the whole business of bringing the two ends together, bringing the knowledge institutions together with the production actors, whatever the scale of their production, whether at micro or small or medium, the whole business of strengthening that linkage, in fact, institutionalizing that linkage is what should engage us so that eventually we'll begin getting into the developmental university concept. For Africa Lakes, I think that Africa Lakes is just one part of the global lakes that we all belong to. And so for us, we are making efforts to first and foremost get our members to appreciate better the innovation system approach to the research that we do. And hopefully when we do that, because we are coming from the knowledge institutions, universities, and research institutions, we'll be able to bring about change in these knowledge institutions. Practically, one of the things we are also doing is to institutionalize a mentorship program where the young researchers are being brought up to better understand the innovation system approach to the research that they are conducting. And practically also, as we have the opportunity, we enter into collaborative programs with other institutions. As for example, we've had a collaborative program with Aalborg University, and we had postdoc participants from Ethiopia, from Ghana, I believe also from Kenya. And in participating in this, their competence in going into innovation studies becomes strengthened. So I think that's our end here, so we can go on with the other discussions. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, George. And Sean, I think we'll stay in the African context, and then I think we're coming back to Carlos and Lena and Gabriela. She'd like to say anything at the end, and then we're finished, I think. And maybe Judith Francis would also like to say something. Sean, go ahead.
Thank you, Andrew. I want to comment firstly on Carlos's presentation, and I want to remind all the younger researchers and scholars that coming from innovation systems, your most powerful tool is your ability to switch between domains and to connect different knowledge domains. And that is what our communities and our small businesses out there need. They don't need an engineer. They don't need a particular kind of scientist. They need somebody that can understand their problems, that can actually sometimes help them to articulate or even maybe develop specifications about what they need, and that can then help them to navigate the world of knowledge. I really enjoyed Carlos's presentation, also starting from a technology transfer center that typically starts off, we are the clever people, we have the solutions, and we have to find a way of getting this to the entrepreneur, and then switching to a facilitated approach that said, we are here to listen, let us go and find out what people are struggling with and what they are prioritizing. So I really enjoyed Carlos's presentation. And I mean, Judith, your comments really also had me very excited, because I think that in South Africa, there's so much pressure on our universities to educate and educate. And I mean, there's also really a very big need, because the requirements of our labor market is shifting very, very rapidly. But there is still a very strong bias towards this knowledge is power. And with knowledge, we develop, we do R&D, and then we do innovation out of that. And I really enjoyed your comments on that. And I'm really pleased also then that Professor Lundvall said, well, you need some of that. So, you know, it calmed me down a little bit. So I really enjoyed today and the previous sessions. But, you know, I really think that from an innovation systems perspective, maybe if I could just conclude with this to say, the innovation systems concepts and frameworks gives us a lot of frameworks that we can help communities with, without teaching them about innovation systems, without teaching them about all these other things, but using our frameworks to solve problems in new ways. So I really just want to tip my hat to all the speakers today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sean. And we're at the time limit, but we're going to take another 15 minutes. And what we have Martin, who had asked a question earlier. I think it's been addressed, but if you wanted to say something quickly, Tesfa, I believe, would also like to say something, and maybe then go ahead, Martin.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to the presenters. They were very illuminating insights. I'm based at a university in Kenya, Strathmore, and we pride ourselves in working with the SME sector. I'm using it as one of my case studies in my doctoral studies. I had the two questions. I think they've been addressed. What would Carlos consider the top 3 systemic barriers at a national and regional level? And I asked that to get a sense in a Kenyan context, in a Rwanda context, East Africa, what are some of the lessons we can pick? But more interestingly, and building on earlier conversations, COVID-19 has really changed how we think about university because of digital learning. What are some of the challenges? What are some of the opportunities in the context of the Global South, especially as you think of developmental university? And I like that link with the SME sector. What has digital learning changed? Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, let's, are there other junior researchers who'd like to come in, or then we're going back to
Andrew, let's call Judith Francis.
Okay.
Judith, please come on. Yeah.
Rajesh and Andrew, thank you. Are you hearing me well?
Yes,
okay. Yeah. Well, first I want to really commend you, Rajesh, for and your team for organizing this series, because we've been working with in terms of building capacity and applying the innovation systems approach to the agricultural sector. And what the session today and the previous ones that I have listened into is showing that there is still a lot of work to be done. And this is why I really appreciated Carlos's presentation, to apply the innovation systems approach within his university and to document the lessons so that we can all learn. Because what he is finding is exactly what has been unearthed in other applications of the innovation systems approach in terms of national development. So it's time for us to look inward in the important strategic areas, education, which is what we are dealing with today, in agriculture, in health, and then seeing the entry points for impacting on change on the ground. So I was really thrilled to see this. And then to learn from good practice, best practice. And this is why I was happy that Cuba was mentioned, because more than 20 years ago, I used to admire and promote Cuba as a good practice. So in conclusion, we have a lot of work still to do. Every time we start discussing about the relevance of the innovation systems approach to development, some of the same questions arise and we lose the policymakers. So they are totally confused as to what we mean, because we start questioning each other and our approaches, etc. Two, the importance to the strategic decisions we have to make to support development of sectors, SMEs, etc. And I am so happy the issue of looking at the ranking system, because it comes up again and again in international fora, regional fora, but nobody is taking or willing to bite the tail of the tiger. So thank you very much. And Rajesh, I don't know how we can continue this discussion, which will make sure that we actually, in 5-10 years, see some change on the ground. Thank you. And insisting that I speak. Good luck.
Thank you very much, Judith. Tesfa would like to say something quickly, and then we're going to Carlos and Lena to finish off. Tesfa?
I think he has left. So let's continue with Carlos and Professor Lena.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks a lot for your wonderful comments. It's really inspiring to listen to these distinguished professors to talk about this with such passion also, because it's something that matters to all of us. I just want to connect some ideas and hopefully to answer also some of your questions. The first one, once again, based on our experience, is that as long as we get involved with the cluster firms, both in the leather sector and in the food sector, different possibilities for collaboration appear. Also different needs to produce knowledge. And this is not only, let's say, a knowledge that it's not very intense or advanced, but also knowledge that it's very, very, very difficult to find. I would like to remember the prototypes. These are very simple machines, not very complicated, produced by students, supervised by researchers, but also, for example, when it comes to water treatment of tanneries, we are working at the Biotechnology Center with PhDs at other different levels. So the point here I want to say is that when it comes to social inclusion and environmental issues, also and even more knowledge is needed, not less than usual, let's say. That is very, very, very important. Also, when it comes to developmental universities and what kind of knowledge should be produced, for me, all knowledge is needed, especially with the challenges we have today. But for me, a more profound question is how this knowledge is produced, what kind of relations are built in this process, and for whom. That is very important, and what kind of learning capacities are built in the process. For me, that is the key, especially to cross these learning divides and etc. So I think what kind of collaborations we're able to build in these efforts, because despite our efforts to build this scenario, this interactive learning spaces, of course, most of our researchers and research units are still working on isolation. And that is also one of the main challenges we have now concerning the question of the challenges. I think developmental university approaches has to do also with a systemic approach of the university to support for inclusion and also to contribute to environmental issues. This systemic approach has to do also with these learning processes and how we are building endogenous capacities, or maybe also technological trajectories. We are learning how we are producing that. I think that's very important. The second and third challenge, I will say, is the low effective demand from the firms. That has been a real challenge, and not because they don't have money, let's say. It has to do with something maybe cultural or a paradigm we have in our minds, where we don't trust in our local capacities and we trust more in the foreign capacities to solve problems. And I think that's something very difficult. And in the third place, I would say the low government demand for knowledge. That's also very important, because government could be a really big partner building local capacities, not only at the university, concerning, for example, different issues like health, like environmental, food security, food safety, water, etc., energy. They should also transform these needs for solutions in society in knowledge demands. for the local universities, and also foster collaborations with other universities or other actors in society to solve these problems locally, and also to build other contributions. Of course, many problems can be just imported. It's an issue of a strategy, but we are now living too much for Indian capacities and really not supporting too much the building endogenous capacity. So that's why we are making a lot of focus on that. I would finish my comments with that. Thank you very much again to everybody.
Thank you very much, Carlos. And I think we're now finishing with Lena. And I'm sorry if some people didn't get to speak, but I'd like to say if you put what you want to say in the chat, then we'll take it into account in the way we're systematizing this. Lena.
Thank you. I don't want to have the last word. I hope that somebody else will have it. But I just want to say that I do appreciate so much this discussion. And thank you so much, Judith Sutz and Gabriela, for your comments. And of course, Carlos. I just want to mention that I think it's very important not to divide or to decide to use either applied or basic research. In some areas, they are just collapsing. And also, as Carlos also mentioned in his presentation, there is no, we should not make a war between mode 1 and mode 2 researchers. That is not the case. But there is a power game here. And I just want to mention that the former general director of SIDA, who then became the research minister in Sweden, he put out a research bill. And that research bill is the best research bill I have ever read. And if I translate it, is the societal relevance of research. He was so criticized, he was just cut off of the prestigious university rectors in Sweden. So it's a big power game there. But thank you, Judith, for your contribution. Thank you, thank you. You are giving us hope.
I am very much ashamed, but I cannot but thank you so much, Lena.
Okay, so maybe Rajesh, you can give us the last words. And I once again want to thank all your participation, all your comments. Special thanks also to Judith for being this inspiration in my work and in our community here in Cochabamba. Thank you very much.
Would Professor Gabriela like to say something in conclusion? No. Okay. Okay. You have spoken. Okay. So this is a moment of a small fulfillment. The idea of this lecture series, was kindled during my participation in 2014 Globalix conference. I think 14 or 15 Globalix conference held in Addis Ababa. So in the concluding part of that conference, Bentoke spoke. He started speaking about Christopher Freeman, and he broke down. He wept. Then the day speaker, Martin Bell, who gave that year's Freeman lecture, broke too, and that made me think about the person about whom these two big scholars were weeping about. So that I never knew much about Freeman. Of course, I had read about Freeman. I had read about others written about him, etc. But I never knew the man. So then onwards, I started reading about him, and I found that he was not simply an innovation scholar. He was much more than that. And that thought, after starting this series, that thought came to a completion by a question raised to me by a friend. I acquired through this conference, this series of lectures, Yergun Turkan, who was the first research associate of Freeman at SPRU. Much before SPRU was formally established as a renowned center, while it was functioning in a small makeshift structure, Turkan remembers that even though Freeman and Jeffrey Oldham were given full professorship, they were never addressed as professors because innovation systems or innovation was until then was not recognized as a full-fledged discipline. So thank you, Bentoke, for correcting me in my presentation. Several times I used the term incorrectly, innovation system as a discipline. So Bentoke corrected me that it is not a discipline, and Freeman never considered it as a full-fledged discipline. So Turkan told me that Freeman was never referred those days as a professor because innovation systems in Sussex was then not a full-fledged discipline. So today's, I remembered I was not prepared to give this remarks for fear of a shortage of time. But while listening to Carlos' presentation, wonderful presentation, discussion by Professor Lena and Professor Gabriela, and also excellent remarks by Professor Suits, and also Judith. So I thought, I was recollecting all these conversations. And Professor Turkan also told me, he just asked me why, as to Professor Freeman has listed out all the works of Freeman, and he says more than 60% of his works, his papers and his books were not single authored. They were all co-authored. And I see that most of his books he has co-authored with Luxut. Why is it so? Why didn't he publish by a single author thing? And this was, I had thought about it, but it has come to my mind many times. But several times I had listened to Bentoke and Luxut saying that they were competing for the second authorship with Freeman. So Freeman would say he will be the second author, Bentoke would say he will be the second author. So that was the sort of competition. I was just thinking whether in the current times, whether this is possible, whether it is a university, whether it is a research station. And in India, many research stations, the directors are sending out circulars to faculties warning them not to publish without informing the director. So any publication before going to the journal should go through this bureaucratic channel so that many people get authorship in that particular paper, which much before being sent to journal. So this is the sort of competition the publishing industry has brought us all. So I did not want to mention this, but the discussions touched me. So let me say a few, take another 1 minute or so, summing up the whole effort behind it. So we started this program without much ambitions. It was a very small scale program, and the idea was to give opportunity to students like me, interdisciplinarian, from a developing country, global south, without much backing of economics proper, and also no much chances of getting excellent supervision by front-ranking scholars, researchers. So I had difficulty, but for Globalix and its conferences and its academies, I wouldn't have finished my thesis. Bentoke helped me in finalizing, my proposal. So this, I thought many students, a large number of students from the global south, especially countries like India, many countries in Africa, must be facing such problems. They may not be able even to write a proper research proposal in innovation systems. I had an opportunity to speak to a number of professors in India economics professors. I asked, Christopher Freeman? Many said no, they don't know Christopher Freeman. They don't know innovation systems. India, we have Indialics, but many economics proper scholars do not understand what Christopher Freeman wrote. So this, I thought, there is a need that the message is to be disseminated among the junior scholars, the early career scholars, so that many of them will be encouraged to take up innovation systems or national systems of innovations as the theoretical frame in their research. So this was a humble beginning. We started it all with a few, less than 10 people, 10 alumni of various Globalix academies, and it grew, as once Carlos said, it grew an organic growth. Now we have more than 70 collaborators in this program. We had nearly 40 speakers, plus commentators, chairs and all. Now we are going to have 2 panels on one. The first panel is falling on the 1st of April, and the second panel on 7th. We are going to have 12 plus 12, 24 scholars. The front-ranking scholars, many of them are very big scholars. They are sitting, and we are expecting a large crowd. Already nearly 400 registrations. This Zoom platform can hold only 300. So the remaining 100, I think they will have to attend the program from the YouTube live. So I think this is a very encouraging situation. And the last, being the last lecture in the 12th lecture, I think Carlos has done a wonderful job by connecting theory to practice. So this, I think, is a wonderful beginning to the sequel that we are planning, maybe from the next, after a couple of months, a series which we are going to call Innovation Systems 102, going to be presentations on practical applications of innovation systems or national systems of innovation theory. So I think this is a wonderful beginning for that series. We are much, the network, the small network has grown. We have plenty of very good scholars with us now. So I think we are ending the lecture series on a very good note. We are not stopping. Please be with us for the next 2 weeks until 7th of April. We will be with all of you. And a small request from my side, tonight, or this is evening in India, it is now 10 o'clock night. So immediately after this program, this session, I'm planning to send out an evaluation form to all of you, all the participants. My humble request is that please return this questionnaire, which is going to be a Google document. Please fill it up, Google evaluation form. Please fill it up. It's a small form. Please fill it up immediately and return within a week, so that we can present the report at the end of the last panel. So I thank you all. We received an overwhelming support, a lot of goodwill and lot of appreciation from the participants and the very big scholars. Thank you so much. So let us conclude with the usual hi. I request all of you to unmute and say hi, and let's part. Thank you very much. Can you unmute?
Why don't we have an applause for Rajesh? Huh? Really, very
well done.
May I say something? Hello, Rajesh. I mean, it's fantastic what you've been doing, eh? And actually, you are realizing some of the dreams we had when we started globally around the thank you very much.
Hello, Rajesh. Rajesh. Hello.
Hi. Hello. Hello. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you, George. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, George. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Bye-bye. Take care. Thank you, Lena, Gabriela. Thank you, Rajesh.
Carlos, thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Alex, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you,
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Collaboration. Gracias.
See you all.
Fantastic.
You see.
Yeah.